Okay, hopefully everybody can see my MAXQDA screen and my little image above it. Not that that's particularly important, but the MAXQDA screen is. So hello, I'm Graham Hughes. I've been working with MAXQDA for a long time. Elias was just asking just how long. I think it's since 2008. So what's that, about 16 years I've been working with MAXQDA, but I've been training people in it since about 2014. Mainly. So let's get down to creative coding, which you'll find this function can only be accessed from one place. Oh, by the way, I don't have any PowerPoint slides, so don't worry about that. But there is a handout which will be available after the session, I believe. So just sit back, listen and enjoy. And most of the things that I'll be telling you are in the handout, and all the way that I'm planning to work is also in the handout. So that will become available to you after the session. So creative coding. I've just been listening to Stefan Rediker in his previous session on grounded theory, and he did quite a little bit of creative coding in that. And I'm going to pick up, if you were in that session, this one will cover a fair amount of overlap, but hopefully in a little bit more detail, because I'm only concerned with the creative coding. Grounded theory is one of its principal applications, but it can be used in various other methodologies as well. Don't ask me to tell you which, because there are so many different methodologies and I'm not an expert in all of them. But if you I will try and demonstrate it in such a way that if it would be relevant to you, you'll spot it. It's concerned with reorganizing your codes in your code system. That's the creative element of it. If we've got a long list of codes, and you're finding it's getting a little bit chaotic, and your ideas are getting lost in all this detail of all these many codes, then the creative coding tool might be a really good way of getting a grip back on what you're trying to do. I'm going to be using for this demonstration the English language example project, the work-life balance. But I have modified that example prior to this session by doing a whole bunch of coding work. There was, in the example, as you can open it at any stage, you'll find there is a code called typical workday, where our people are asked, let's just have a look. That wasn't what I meant. I want this one. I just want to activate it without the subcodes, and just click on one of these. So the question that the respondents were asked was, first of all, could you describe a typical workday in your life? And then they would answer, well, a typical workday is blah, blah, blah. And somebody had gone through and coded all those typical workday segments. But I've now come back subsequent to that, and I've broken down those segments into the kind of things they've talked about, and I've created a code for each of those down here, and you can see some of them. Food and drink, I think, is the most frequently used code in this list with 18 uses. Children coming a reasonably close second at 12, and so on. It's not a huge amount of data, but it's just enough, I think, to demonstrate how you might use this creative coding tool. So that's the situation. I've just gone through the 16 segments coded by other coders beforehand. I'm just going to reset that and that. I've gone through those and simply identified where they've talked about children. I've coded it to children. Where they've talked about working on a computer and so on, meditation, relax, and so on. Created those codes and applied them to small segments. As you can see on the right-hand side here, there's a segment coded to free time. Work time. Oh, yes, work times is the whole segment. And now I want to reorganize these and think about higher level concepts that might be behind them. So I'm going to start a creative coding session. Oh, so just to emphasize, you can't start with creative coding. You can only use creative coding after you have done at least some substantive coding. You've got, because the creative coding tool works with existing codes. There is no possibility within the creative coding tool of applying codes to new bits of data. That's simply not an option. We're concerned with reorganizing codes in the code system. We might create some new codes as concepts, as higher level categories, but we're not going to be attaching them directly to data. I think let's get started. Let's open it. So I'm going to start a creative coding tool session by clicking on that. And once I open it, the program behind is frozen. Even if I were to minimize, I haven't got a minimize button. That's interesting. But I couldn't do anything in the program behind here once I've started a creative coding session. Amusingly, they've gone and updated MAXQDA since I wrote the handout and planned this session. So to some extent, the screenshots will be slightly different. And some of the advice in the handout I will point out. So we've got a blank screen here, which is essentially a Max map, and it's a mapping interface that we're going to work on. And so it's asking me to drag all the codes I want to organize into this area. Now, I could simply drag codes one at a time, move them across. I'm doing it slightly at random. That's perfectly okay, nothing wrong with that. But if I now want to remove those, remove from map. Okay, I can do it with the context menu, right click. There used to be a button saying remove from map, and I can't see that. Right click and remove from map. Much easier if they are within some kind of group already. If you bring a header code, it will bring in all of the subcodes that are under it. So that's a much easier way of starting this session than doing them all one at a time. Also, as the handout says, once you start the session, you can no longer add new codes. They seem to have changed the program fundamentally for that, because now it would appear we can add further codes at any stage. There used to be an operation that you bring the codes in, and then prior to this latest update, and then you'd click on a start creative coding, and the code system window would close and you'd just be left with an empty map. Now we seem to have just got the start menu with all of these functions there, and I can still add more codes at a later stage. So you'll have to slightly modify your reading of the map, but it doesn't change the underlying concepts behind here. What I can do now is think creatively about what these codes mean. I need to get my typical Workday code a little bit out of the way, and I'm going to move the codes into the white space down below as I think about them. I need to start having some ideas, and this is why it's called creative coding. I need to think about how I might interpret these codes in different ways. And one way I might try to think about them is some things in a typical workday are fixed by outside forces. Perhaps the times you work, things like travel to your work, perhaps the children, when you've got to take children to school, feed children, and so on. Meetings might well be happening at fixed times. Other things might be much more free flow. You probably choose when you're going to eat and drink, when you're going to meditate, when you're going to exercise. I hover over a code to pick it up and I can move it, and I'm grouping the codes on this screen, perhaps relaxing and showering. Some things might be a bit constrained by others, like maybe studying. Why can I get the studying one? No, I want the studying one. Okay, I've got to zoom in a little bit to pick it up. Shopping I can move. Okay, let's move the work times and that one a little bit away, and then I can pick up studying and get it. Okay, you've got to sometimes be a little bit creative in that sense. Let's put housework. That's maybe constrained by these other things. Oh, friends, that should be fairly loose and relaxed. And I can get the free time. Yep, I can get the free time. So that's one way I might think of higher level concepts. But then again, that's not really working for me. So I'm going to do a different one. And I'm going to think that a lot of these things, some of these things are about domestic activities like housework. So I'm going to put domestic things over here. I'm going to put the shopping over there. And I'm going to put very personal things like meditation in the middle, relaxation, food and drink. Not sure. That might be with at the house doing exercise over here. But I'm going to now, and showering, but I'm going to put my meetings over to the left-hand side, my travel over here. I'm just moving things around as I try and spot, the children, they're going to go, they're more domestic, I think. Work, oh yes, work's got to go over here. Work at home, even though it's at home and the computer looks like that's something for work. Free time, yeah, we'll have that here. So I'm getting some groups here where I'm thinking that these are quite personal things. These are things all to do with the world of work, and these are more domestic things. And there might be some things that are a little bit studying. That could be halfway between personal and work, and friends. That might be, I'm not sure whether that's personal or domestic. And so on. So as I'm thinking about these, I can move them around and the map helps me explore the ideas. But now, what I want to really emphasize, something Stefan didn't have a chance to go into, is that you're not just playing with these things as abstract concepts. If there's any doubt about what is behind something, if I point to one and do a right mouse click, I can get a little context menu, not only removed from the map, that's not what I want, but I can look, for example, at an overview of coded segments. Let me click on that, and it pulls up the actual segments that are attached to this code, which is the code, just make it a little bit wider, it was studying. Studying was the code I pulled up here. And if I click on any one of these, I can see the whole segment up in the top. That's just a question about studying. So they've got two questions, so that's not very significant. This is the only one which is a response. 8 hours of learning time. Yes, eight hours a day at school. Office 3 times, and then he's part working, part at school. Okay, so he is studying. I can close that just with an X. So I think it's not very significant. I'm going to put that more over towards the work because he's talking about being in work as well on that one. Let's just look at the friends one. And open up that. Now, we've not only got that overview of coded segments, but we've also got an AI assist function here. So let's think about that, what we could do with that. We could summarize coded segments with this, and I'm just realizing, I should be signed into AI. Let's see. Yes, it has opened up. Let's have text in bullet points, summary language, okay, and let's just summarize these friends codes. So I'm using AI Assist Live. And it brings up my friend's memo, and down here in the bottom half of the memo, it's done a little summary about socializing with friends, dance classes, meeting for dinner, personal time in the evenings, spends quality time, and so on. So that's very much personal. That's confirming to me that these ones are very much about personal stuff with friends. So I'm very happy now that I can group that one clearly in the personal group, along with meditation and relaxing and showering and so on. So don't be afraid to go back to your source data. It could be using AI Assist at a summary level, or as I did with the studying, it could be by actually going back to the original segments and rereading them within the creative coding screen. All of those things are all possible. But now I'm pretty much settling on this particular layout. I'm going to take this one a bit further forward. So now I want to evidence this. And if I use the create a new code, I can create a new code for working and click OK. And it appears in the top left-hand corner of the screen. I can then drag it and put it sort of above these others, but underneath the typical workday. So I'm going to create some a little group of set of 3 codes across here to fill in these gaps. So we'll have another code for personal. Except I want a capital for it. Looks slightly nicer. And click OK. And drag that and put that in this part of the screen. And then the last one was going to be domestic, I think I'm going to call it. So we'll call that domestic. Don't worry about colors and things. We'll come back to those later. I'm just getting an idea of structure at this stage. Now, the next thing is to establish that these work codes are subcodes of working rather than subcodes of the typical workday. And for that, I've got a function here on the toolbar, link define as subcode. This is a mode switch. By default, when you first open up creative coding, it's turned off. So I've been able to drag things around the map, as you've seen me do quite a lot. When I click on this, I don't know if it shows up over this meeting. I can barely see it on my own screen. The button is very slightly blacker. But now I find I can't drag that. If I click on working and move my mouse, I start to get an arrow. I need to drag from working to one of these code labels here. And when I get a gray box surrounding both like this, highlighting both, if I release my button at that stage, the new subcode relationship is established. And the old link from typical workday to computer has gone. That's a fundamental thing with MAXQDA. A code cannot be a subcode of 2 or 3 or any more other codes. There's a saying in English, no man can serve 2 masters. So put that into MAXQDA, no code can serve 2 parent codes. A code can only have 1 parent. So once I've made computer a subcode of working, it can no longer be a subcode of typical workday. To create this subcode, you drag from the parent to the subcode. So I'm now starting another one. When I get the work at home in the box, that has established that its link has gone. It's quite quick work. That's done it to meetings. That's done it to work times. They've improved this. This was sometimes a bit clunky before, but now it seems to be finding them quite neatly. And I've got to, that little group I've now created. And lastly, I can make working a subcode of typical workday. And I've created a new structure. So my working is a kind of higher level concept between these actual activities and the overall holding code of the typical workday routines. Am I still in link define mode? If I just click in the white space, no, I think I'm still in link define mode. No, I'm not. It's come out of it. So now I can move something around if I want. I can move these around. So sometimes if you click in the white space, it drops out of the linking mode. Let's click on it again and try and quickly use this personal. No, I've lost it. Okay, let's move these. I'm just having a little bit of trouble. Move these slightly out of the way. Now let's try again. Now I can, oh no, it's still not picking up my link. Now I'm getting the movement. I might have a bit of trouble with those 2 that are close together at the bottom. Let's do all the others. And can it do the meditation? Can it get? Yes, it can. Come out of the link mode, and I should be able to move the meditation around. Yes, I can make the group a little neater if I want. So you've got to be relax didn't get done. So go back into link, drag and get the relax code there, and now typical workday down to there, and so on. And now let's see if we can do these last ones quickly. So this bit doesn't feel so creative as that first stage when I was dragging things around the screen. Now our memos come up, won't go away. Right, now I've clicked in the white space. I'm no longer in that if I move a code around, its subcodes come with it. And I can tidy my map up a little bit if I want, get these in a more consistent stage. Now let's now think about color. Having done that, if I select a code like working and click on the color wheel here, I can choose a color for my working code. So I'm just going to give it a bright red, and I get a useful dialog comes up, change color for subcodes. And I'm going to say yes, so that all this little group of codes share a common color, that they're red. And if I click on this one and click on the color, let's make this one a bright green, along with its subcodes. Hopefully that'll show up reasonably well. I'll leave the domestic ones at their default blue. Now, at various stages, as you're working on this, you can choose to save your map as a max map. That can be really useful if you have a variety of ideas that you explore. I could have, when I had my is it fixed or is it flexible kind of grouping, I could have saved that as a temporary map just to store those ideas, which I wasn't going with, but I could have come back to them that way. It now appears, if I wanted, I could also drag in other codes from other parts of the code system, which is a new feature, and I haven't got my head around that completely yet, but we won't worry about that too much. Let's say now I'm reasonably content. I've managed to create some order. I've come up with some higher level categories. They're not very exciting, but the data isn't very rich. I hope you'll forgive me for that. But I can now, I'm now ready to finish my creative coding session. We've got a button here on the toolbar for that. And at this point, we get a very scary dialogue comes up. I don't know if it's big enough for you to read. I'll read it out to you. It says, apply code structure to your code system, ? This process is non-reversible. Big, big warning. Please note, this is the only time, so far as I know, in MAXQDA, where doing something in a max map changes or will change the underlying project file. So that's what that's doing. My new structure will be applied to the code system and we can't undo it. A couple of other points. The creative coding map will be saved as a regular max map. So I don't have to do that save as a max map when I'm finishing the session. It's going to save this final map for me. And then usefully, an automatic backup of your project file will be created. That's what it says. And I'm going to add to that before the changes that you've created in this session are applied. So a backup will be taken with the code system looking like this before it applies the changes. Then slightly confusing, you've got 3 buttons. Yes, yes, no, and cancel. Let's deal with cancel first. If I click cancel, I will do now, nothing changes. That's just for the situation that you might, in the middle of a creative coding session, be trying to create a new code and your mouse slips a tiny bit to the left, and instead of clicking the new code, you click the finish. Whoops, I don't want to finish. I don't want, oh, help, help, what's going to happen? So the cancel is, oh, okay, I clicked that button by mistake. I didn't want to finish. I was really trying to get the button next door to it. These things happen. Okay, so that's what the cancel button is. I'm clicking it again, so there's the same dialogue. So that's what happens if you cancel. It just forgets the command. If I click no, the creative coding session will be finished and the map will be sent to Max Maps, but no changes will happen here. I can back out at this point and say, very, very interesting, but I don't really like it. I don't think I want it. All right. Only if you click yes at this point do the changes happen. So let me now demonstrate that. I click yes. It's just done the backup. That's what flashed up on the screen. That, if you're very quick, you might have seen the little backup time bar. And now look, my code system is now significantly altered. And even in the browser, document browser up here, a segment that was highlighted for studying is showing its new code color of red. So even that has been changed. So yes, over here, the typical Workday code is there, and I've got my domestic group, my personal group, and my working group. Something I would just point out here, in the map that you saw a moment ago, I had work on the left, personal in the middle, and domestic on the right. You might have thought work would appear at the top of the list. No, in bringing it into the code system, I think MAXQDA applies an alphabetical sort. So D for domestic comes before P for personal, comes before W for working, I'm afraid. So they come in alphabetical order by the higher level codes, my higher level categories maybe. And also you'll find, even if you'd started this with a group of codes way down at the bottom of the code system, at the end of the creative coding, they get put right at the top of the code system. Though I think there was something before above typical Workday. Yes, it was within interview code's current work-life balance. So if I want to restore that aspect, I'm just going to minimize these groups so that you can see more easily. What I could now do is take my typical Workday and drag it down and put it into my current work-life balance. So it's at the same level as flexibility and unpaid labor and so on. And then I could re-expand these. And that the important thing is the new order for the domestic, personal, and working categories is in my code system. And that's the purpose of the creative coding tool. Let me just go to the Max Maps in the visual tools and open that briefly. And down here, I've been doing this before in practice, so I'll just open the last one, Creative Coding 5, and that hopefully is recognizable to you as the map I created just a few minutes ago. Now in Max Maps, I probably have got tools if I wanted. If I select something, I can change details of it if I want to change the font of the code, labels and things to pretty things up. But if I go back to my Start menu, I've got the possibility of sending this map off to a QTT worksheet, or exporting it in some way, or taking a kind of photo of it, copying it as an image, to put that image or somehow, whatever form, whether it's a GIF or whatever, to have that as something that go into an appendix to your thesis as evidence of the creative process that you went through to identify these higher level categories. I think that's very, very important, that you can keep good records of how your thinking developed. Even if you don't put it into an appendix, it might be useful when you're coming to defend your thesis. If you're doing a PhD, it could be useful to be able to refer back to these intermediate stage maps. I'm going to close that Max Maps, just make it smaller so I close the right thing. I'm open to questions. Chelsea King, is there an undo button in MAXQDA to undo your last click action? Yes, normally it's here, Chelsea, on the main menu bar, level with all the other menu labels, there is an undo function. But we cannot reliably expect that to undo the creative coding import. If I just get to this point and decide, no, actually, I really don't like what I've done there, what I've then got to do is I've got to go to home and I've got to open a backup. I've got to open the backup that was just done. That's interesting. Don't think I've ever tried to open a backup. Wonder how I do that. I'll have to go and look at the help sometime. Let's not dwell too much. In theory, I can find a backup. So I've probably got to go to the backups folder and open it from there. That's the only way to undo that function. If I'd changed something in the Max Maps, I could have undone it here. If I attach a code to a segment over here, let me just attach free time to that just for the sake of illustration. I've done that, click on it, highlight it. Oh, but that's a question, not data. That was stupid of me. if I click on the undo assign code, yes, it's gone away again. That's doing undo in normal MAXQDA. But it's important to realize the creative coding, the final step, doesn't, you can't necessarily. Bashir is asking, why did the parent code, e.g. domestic, have the sum of the child codes? Okay, this isn't really to do with creative coding. This is fundamental to the way the coding system works. Just look at this little group of codes here, domestic. We've got a parent code domestic, which has 0 in here. Children has 12, housework 2, and shopping 3. If I minimize the group, so I'm only seeing the parent, then the number of the total of the 3 subcodes, which is 17, appears here. But as soon as I expand the group again, domestic goes back to 0 because there are no data segments actually attached to domestic. The data segments are only attached to the subcodes. Hope that answers your question. Oh, Andrew's telling us in the chat, go to Open Project, go to backup folder. Oh, okay. I didn't see a backup folder. I go like this. Ah, yes, of course. Open Project there, second click, and then I can navigate and find my backup folder that way. Thank you. Yes, of course. Sometimes when you're presenting, your mind goes a bit blank when something comes up. I'm open to questions in the Q&A, so keep those coming. I'm just going to show you one other thing, which I didn't mention. So I'm going to open a creative coding session again. And I'm going to drag in the same typical Workday group of codes because we've got used to them now. And I can just notice they come in a kind of standard format when you first import them in regular spacing and so on. And they come in a different order. Now, there is one other thing that you might find useful, which I forgot to mention when I was going through in the creative stage. I didn't want to confuse you too much. You can merge 2 codes if in the process of looking at your overview of coded segments, and I look at this, and that is indeed a reference to meditation. Click on it at 9:30. I would meditate a little bit, but just for the sake of illustration, let's look at this showering overview of coded segments and look at these. I take a shower, and I take a shower or a bath. Now, I might decide foolishly that those 2 codes are so similar that I don't really need both of them any longer. I can merge them inside MAXQDA simply by dragging one code on top of the other, like that. When I release the button, oh, okay, well, they're both there. That's interesting. You see, they've gone and updated it. Okay, well, let's see. I can't put it any more perfectly on top. Let's close the session. Yes. Showering has disappeared. No, sorry, it didn't do it. Oh, have they changed that? Okay, I've always been able to merge 2 codes here by doing a right click on, say, showering and say move coded segments, and then doing a right click on meditation and saying paste coded segments from showering. I'm not going to go through with that. But I thought I could do it inside the creative coding. I'm glad I didn't put that into the main part of the presentation. Well, I'll have to look at that again. Maybe they've removed that possibility. It surprises me, but maybe that has happened. So, any other questions? I think I've done most of the things. Have a play with it. Really, you want to have a go using this creative coding on some data that doesn't matter too much. So don't do it first time off in your one and only live project with masses and masses of data, because if you make a mess of it, it could prove very costly. So at the very least, take a backup of that main project and work in that backup copy to play around if you want to do it on your own data. Or better, open up the example project and make a backup copy of that to play around with, and then explore these functions the way I've just been exploring. It doesn't matter if I merge showering and meditation, because it's not a live project. I've got it in my temporary working copy of this example, which I've made for the purposes of this demonstration. I'm a great believer with MAXQDA. If there's something you're not sure how it works, do a little experiment in some non-significant data, in some unimportant data, like a copy of an example project. Play around with the tool there, where you can check out the effects and see if you like it or not. And then only if you're reasonably confident that you like what it does and you know how to do it, then you can apply it in your main project. When you're trying to do something creative, like identifying these higher level categories, because you're trying to move from your thematic analysis to be a little bit more grounded, maybe, you want to have a brain that can focus on the ideas and not have to worry about, how do I do it? How do I get the mouse to move this? Am I in link mode or am I in normal mode? Am I in link create subcode, or will it move, and so on? Your brain wants to be clearly able to focus on all of the concepts and ideas and themes, and you want the mechanics to be much more second nature, much more just automatic. When you're driving a car, you no longer think how to change gear. You think, I need to turn left here, and you just change gear without thinking about it. You want to get to MAXQDA that you're not thinking about how to make this code a subcode of that one. You just do it because you practiced a little bit on some unimportant data. Well, I think I managed to bamboozle you. We're getting near the end of time, and I've only had 2 questions. Anybody else got... have I answered those questions to your satisfaction, by the way? Those who did ask. I'm just going to check my notes, see if there's anything else I was planning to say that I've missed. I've been slightly thrown by those changes to the program. I was aware that they'd changed the thing so you could add new codes even in the middle of a session. But I'm slightly disappointed that I was unable to merge those 2 codes at the point where I thought I was going to. Well, that's great. Oh, here we are. Darren, if you've been using NVivo, oh, bad luck, and already done coding, can you import into NVivo? Well, what you want to do, Darren, is import your work from NVivo into MAXQDA. And yes, in essence, it's not easy, but there is a transfer standard where you can export your NVivo project into an intermediate level, and then you can import from that into MAXQDA. Now, I think you need to possibly do a bit of Google work to find advice on how to move a project from an NVivo project to a MAXQDA, but I've never done it myself live. I would always recommend people to do so, because I think NVivo is one of the worst pieces of software ever written by any man or computer or beast. And so if you can escape from the clutches of NVivo into the wonderful world of MAXQDA, you'll be doing yourself a huge favor. So do follow that up. But it is not a bar. You will not lose most of your coding work. If there's something very, very sophisticated, some aspect of it might not go through that. but all perfectly normal manual coding work will come across, and a standard has been agreed between the programmers to allow that to happen. Carrie is asking, how do you create a code book in MAXQDA? Well, the code, I think you possibly mean, how do you export your code system? And you've got here, you've got a export your codes, your whole code system. If this is what you mean by create a code book, you can create, I wonder if that REFI QDA codebook, that might be part of that standard for answering Darren's question about importing. It's ringing a small bell in my mind. But if you, by create a codebook, you mean for an appendix to your PhD thesis, you probably simply want to export your codes in Word document format using this function on the codes one. If, on the other hand, you mean, how do we get all these codes into the code system? Well, that's where you've got to create the codes as you're coming along, needing them, and so on. You can also move codes from one project to another by exporting the code system in a MAXQDA code system format, and then importing a code system by navigating and finding a MAXQDA code system format file. So you can move a code system from one project to another inside MAXQDA very well, very well. Hopefully that's answered Carrie's question. Someone called Bektas Fatosh, if there is another independent higher code as well, can it be added to the map? Well, it seems yes, you can add higher level codes even during your creative coding session. So yes, you can bring in other codes and make more sophisticated, many more tiers to the code system if you want. Darren asks again, I may have missed you talking about this, but can you import into MAXQDA an Excel spreadsheet with the demographics about all your interviewees? Yes, you most certainly can, Darren. You need to read up the reference manual about variables. You need to open up your list of document variables and go to the reference manual here, the help manual, where you can get lots of useful advice about it. And if you go into the, let me just close that and go to the data editor, there is an import function here, import data for document variables, and it will import it from an Excel spreadsheet. Yes, you most certainly can. What you've got to be careful, Darren, is that the document names in your spreadsheet are identical with the document names in your MAXQDA project. And so what you might find a good thing that is recommended if you want to do this, and you've already got data inside your MAXQDA project, is to open up the data editor on your MAXQDA project and export the current variable structure, because that will give you all of the document groups and document names exactly as they are in MAXQDA. Then paste into that export. The export can be done in Excel format. Okay, so you put it into an Excel workbook, and then working in Excel, paste into that exported spreadsheet all the demographics that you want, and then re-import it back in and tell it on the re-import not to ignore duplicates. And I think you'll find that'll work well. Xiao Li is saying, can we view codes with memo inside MAXQDA and edit many memos at the same time? You certainly can view your memos inside MAXQDA. Let me just close this. If you go to the memos ribbon and open up, say, the all memos window here, here in this example, I've got this lists on this side. It may look like the document system or the code system, but actually it's giving you the location of all the memos. So code memos which are in documents will come in document memos. Here we are. So we have the document names and the paragraph numbers where the memos exist. These are memos attached to codes, basically code memos. So they are attached to the the top of the code. And we can also have a memo at the top of the document and so on. Document summaries are often put into these and so on. So here you can edit these in the panel on the right. So you can select any memo on the left there and open it up here on the right and edit it as far as is valid and so on. So yes, you can view and edit your memo codes inside, and you can edit. You wouldn't want to edit 3 memos simultaneously. That can't make sense because each memo is unique. So I can't see a use for many memos at the same time, but I think what I'm showing you here to quickly move between your memos where you can edit them probably is what you're actually looking for there.